Okay, so today we're talking about soldering, the do's and don'ts of a good solder connection. There's a million ways to do this. This is number 853. So, anyways, what we're going to talk about is how to properly solder. A lot of people will make a cold solder joint, and when you make a cold solder joint, that's where the solder easily breaks. And I'm going to show you the proper way to do that so that the solder won't break and your electronics will stay running through the stress and vibration of the car jumping around the track. So first thing we're going to do is when you get your Dean's connector, this one's already been stripped down, you have to make sure that you tint your plug. And so what I'm saying by tinting is you got to make sure your iron, first of all, number one, is hot. Number two, you want to use a lead solder. They make lead-free solder on the market. Yes, you can use it. Do I recommend it? No. The higher the content of lead in the solder, the better your solder joint is going to be. So you can sometimes go to a flea market or a yard sale and you can pick up this stuff that really looks nasty and old. But you know what? There's more lead in this old solder from the 40s than there is in some of this new stuff. So that's just a little tip. So look at yard sales for good lead. So going back to tinting, what you want to do is you have to tint the tip of your solder gun first. And do not use that. That is bad solder sitting on it because it's all corroded. So you want to tint it and you want to throw it. Tint it, throw it. Now you got a clean tip. Then you're going to tint your contact. So you're going to start with the top and you're going to hold it, let it get hot, touch it, and pull it away. Notice how nice and shiny that is? That's what you want. Okay. Hit the back side. Hold it on the metal for a second. Let the metal get hot. Run it. Pull it away. It's okay if you have a little jag. The idea is this is what you want to look for when you're done. A nice, clean, shiny, brilliant solder look. Okay. Now, okay. So after you get your solder on your plug tinted, you want to make sure you tint your wire. A lot of times those guys that will strip it, there'll be frays on the end, and they're trying to put the fray end on the solder tint, and they're trying to gel the two together. Always coming back to your solder gun. Get your solder gun nice and hot. Let it heat up. Again, go through the same process. Get it hot. Shake it off. Come over top of your wire. Let it heat up first. Then run your solder over the wire and then pull away. You'll see that nice shiny tint. Once that happens, then the trick to soldering is letting the solder flow towards the heat. A lot of times guys just put the two together and just start holding it like this, and that's where a cold solder joint comes, because one end gets hot, the other doesn't. They pull it away and they think it's okay. The trick is you want to heat up your area first till the solder starts to melt. Once the solder melts like so, then you want to place this piece on, let the two heat together, and then pull it away. Something like that flash is not a problem because you've melted the two together. And you'll see what I'm trying to say, maybe in close camera. You can see how the two gel together. Now, somebody would say that's not enough solder on that lead, they could break it off. Well, if you do it properly, you can pull this about as hard as you can and you can't break that off. Okay? If it's not soldered with the proper amount of heat, it will break off. So in something like this where I'm going to put heat shrink on, this is where if you have a X-Acto knife, or I would say even a pair of little dikes, you can come in there and you can just trim that little bit of flash off like that, and then you can be ready for your heat shrink. This solder joint is perfectly fine. Even though it's not sitting and it's globbed with solder top to bottom, that solder joint is stronger than ever. But a lot of people feel like the bigger the blob, the better the job, and that's not really the case. The case is right amount of heat, let the two solder joints flow together. It doesn't have to be a lot to hold it together, and that's what you're looking for. That's your ending result right there. Okay, so once our solder is complete, obviously you want to put a piece of heat shrink on there. If you don't have a lighter with you, it's not a problem. A lot of guys already know this, but you're going to take your heat shrink over it. Just set it over top like so. You're just going to heat up your iron. Now, what you're going to do is let it get hot. And if you don't have a lighter, this will work just fine. Just heat it up. Just hold it right over top of it. Don't worry about that little bit of solder. They'll wipe right off. And you can just basically go around that. This is if you don't have a lighter with you. And then once that's done, basically take a rag and you can just peel that solder right off the no flake right off. So if you don't have a lighter, you can, a little trick is you can use a solder gun. And there you go. And your heat shrink right over top of it. So, okay, so before you're going to add to the wire to the motor, you obviously want to strip the wire. A safe way to do it is if you have wire strippers. That would be the safest way. If you don't have wire strippers, you can use an X-Acto knife, but please be careful because you don't want to, cut yourself. An easy way, a safe way of doing it is putting the X-Acto knife down on the wire and just rolling it really easy back and forth. You take your time and you roll it really easy. The insulation comes right off, and you don't cut your thumb or your finger or something like that. So then when you go to tin it, you're going to twist the wire a little bit, get it to a nice point. You're going to heat up your iron. Wait for your iron to get hot. Add a little bit of solder. Shake it off. Get your tip clean. Add the iron onto the wire first. Let the wire get hot. Then add your solder and let it drip down in there. You can pull it, and there's a nice silver look that you want, like so. Now you're tinted, ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna mount our wire to the motor. Basically, you want to get your pads hot first. If it's a used motor or a new motor, you still got to do the same. Get your iron hot, put it on the pad, put a touch of solder on the pad like so. So it's just some solder already sitting on there. Then you're going to take your wire, set it in there, hold it on the top, let the two melt together real nicely, and then pull it away, and then just do not move your wire for a few seconds. You don't move your wire for a few seconds, you'll see that nice shiny solder that we wanted to see. If it's frosty or gray, that's a cold solder joint. You want to see it just like that. It doesn't look like there's enough solder on there, but believe me, you can sit there and pull that about as hard as you want, and that's not going to come off. So the old theory about putting a lot of solder on it, a solder joint, that's not going to make it any stronger. You just have to tack it right, get the heat right, and then you're done. So that's what you're looking for when you do a motor up. You can trim that back off with a pair of dikes or something like that and make it clean. And if you're going to desolder it, a motor, basically the way I like to desolder motors is just hang the motor like that. You're going to basically just add your heat, let it get hot. And once it gets hot, you'll see the solder start to melt, and then just slowly give it a little twist, and out it goes. And then people always ask, what do I do about that? Just heat that up and give it a little tap on the table. So there it is, and give it a tap, and usually it'll come right out like so. Yep. Yeah.